Welcome to Rates and Barrels. It's Monday, March 9th. Derek VanRiper here with Eno Sarris. On this episode, we get you caught up on all things baseball, including a World Baseball Classic that has delivered throughout pool play so far. Some big games on tap on Monday night, including a showdown between the U.S. and Mexico. We'll dig into some of the pleasant surprises of the tournament, take a look around the league at some spring training news, and we'll get caught up on some things you were doing in Arizona. It's been a while since we potted. We had some major tech issues at the end of last week. Family bug kept me out of the equation at the end of the week as well. I've dodged it somehow, so I was just running around taking care of everybody else. Stay safe out there. Wash your hands, as we like to say. How's everything going in your world, though?
Oh, it's nuts. I've returned from spring, and you can't say the T word. I'm not tired. No, I couldn't.
You were not allowed to be tired. That was made very clear to me with the transition to family life a couple of years ago. You are not allowed to come home from a work trip and say you're tired. You can be tired, feel your feelings. Do not out loud say you're tired.
Yeah, so trying to jump right back into family life and try to take an extra chunk out of it because my wife has held down the fort for 10 days. But at the same time, spring is the craziest time of year for us work-wise. So it's just one of those things. But it was fun to be out there in Arizona. Got to Reds, Brewers. I did a Team USA stint. Talked to Griffin Jacks at Team USA and it was a whirlwind of clubhouses and games, and then finished it off attending 3 games at the end of the week, more as a fan with some friends. So just a fun time.
All good things. We'll talk about your labor squad at some point and some really deep league
strategies.
Yeah,
I forgot about that. That was the beginning.
That happened. Yeah, because we covered one of the Sabre presentations that you saw. That was the very beginning of the trip. We talked about that last week with Jed, but we never talked about the labor drafts. I did the mixed draft. You did the AL auction. Those have happened. We haven't covered those on the show. They will be covered soon. Tout Wars week is this week. We've got guests coming up later in the week. We have the triumphant return of Britt Giroli, back from covering the Winter Olympics, which had to be an amazing experience. And we've got Jed, we've got Trevor. I think we got Ron Chandler coming up as a guest this week. Been working on that for a little while now. We've got Andrew Baggerly potentially joining us to talk Giants. So, I shouldn't name off the guests until they're confirmed, but I will learn from my mistakes eventually. But to be honest, this spring baseball, March baseball, is amazing this year because the World Baseball Classic is delivering. Saturday alone, 2 walk-off homers. That hasn't happened 2 in the same day in the World Baseball Classic. The first one kept Nicaragua from winning its first ever WBC game. I posted this in the Discord as soon as I saw it happen. There was something that felt kind of inevitable about the situation. The heart of the order was up for the Netherlands. Ozzy Albies came up, hit a 3-run shot down to their last strike with 2 outs in the 9th to give the Netherlands the win. And I kind of had just wished that moment for the Netherlands happened against any other team in the pool, a situation in which they were punching up instead of playing the team that had the longest odds to do well in their group would have been a better moment, but it was still an excellent game, even though it had kind of a sad tone.
It looked so sad afterwards. Yeah, the Nicaraguan players were devastated, and that it speaks to the intensity of this. There's some debate because Bryce Harper said something about the Olympics and that being a bigger deal, and I agree that it's a bigger deal in terms of worldwide eyes and stuff. But the WBC is what we have for currently, playing with your team colors on, and you can tell that there's a little bit of a ratchet above in the celebrations, in the devastation at the end of games, and just the level of play is pretty interesting. You feel like you're like, never heard of this guy. He doesn't throw that hard, and he is competing, dude. On the mound. And I keep pointing to pitching as being the real separator because you've seen a few games go down to like they're close games in the 6 innings, and then in the 7, 8, 9 they fall apart, and that's just because they don't. A lot of these countries don't have the depth. They start their best starters. They go as far as they can go. They keep their best relievers so they can stay in the game, and then they sort of run out of arms at some point. My favorite sleeper is probably Team Italy because at some point they can run Aaron Nola out there. They have some decent, relievers on that squad, and Sam Aldegheri, threw a nice start in his first. And the lineup is really good. Plus, the celebration, it's not so bad.
It's the perfect celebration. I mean, I don't have any Italian heritage, which makes me sad. So I'm married into an Italian family, which allows me to experience a lot of Italian heritage at many family gatherings. And I think the espresso celebration is perfect. I would eat a cannoli if they would have them available. I'd happily do a cannoli shooter. Anything really, a slice of pizza. I think Vinny Pasquantino seems like an absolutely great teammate, by the way, just kind of reading some of the stories about that and kind of watching him as a ringleader of sorts for that group. You mentioned Sam Aldegheri, and I think it's interesting because he had a really good performance in his outing. But more importantly, we were talking about the Angels on the Angels preview, and we were like, hey, what's going on with this pitching depth? Like, who's going to actually come up and give them innings? And Aldegheri is a name that maybe came up, and when I saw how much his strikeout rate had dropped off last season, I basically just cut myself off and was like, yeah, probably not like that. I don't know what caused that dip last year. He is still 24. I think tons of innings last year, 133 and a third, so pretty well stretched out. Most of that time was spent at Double-A. Like I said, a lower K rate, 19.9%, after running 30% plus and 27% plus at pretty much all of his stops before that in the Phillies organization. Like, there's probably still something there. I just haven't figured out why exactly it tailed off so much for him at the Double-A level last year.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's really standout stuff, but if he's a lefty and commands his 4-pitch mix pretty well, like that isn't to say that he can't be a major league starting pitcher. He did run some like high 20s and 30 strikeout rates in the minors. It's amazing how quickly that started to drop off in the high minors. I think he's more of a depth guy than anything, and in terms of like scouting new talent at the WBC, I don't know that I have really circled that many names, although it is the first times that I'm getting live looks on some people. I'm sort of embarrassed to admit that I haven't watched a lot of Travis Bazzana live, but that stance, dude, like he looks like a little bit of a modified Craig Counsell, where his hands are like going up, 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 but he also just looks like speaking of espressos, just had like 8 espressos, and like all he wants to do in the world is hit that ball. So it was pretty fun to watch him. The Australian team in general is pretty amped, and I want to circle them as a potential dark horse, but I'm not sure they have the pitching. There's also a couple of funny things happened with the Australian team. The catcher wouldn't shake the Czech player's hand to start the game, and looked like he said something about pine tar afterwards, but it just looked like, there are people that treat competitiveness in different ways. I would shake the hand, but there's others that are like, no, we're about to battle. I have to sort of make you into an enemy right now. I don't want to shake your hand. I want you're the enemy. So, I think that, and then they also, one of the guys in the outfield got spiked by his teammate, where, you have to think these aren't players that have played a lot of games together. So sometimes when it comes to infield, outfield, and 2 outfielders coming together, it becomes a little bit hairy because they're all competing and, like I said, amped to be there, but also not necessarily used to the sound of their fellow outfielder's voice calling them off.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of things that make this tournament fun. The celebrations, Austin Wells stands out as a distinctly less exuberant celebration than his teammates for the Dominican Republic team. So I feel like maybe they can break him a little bit and say, hey, man, like, it's okay. Like, you're not taking one of the ribs out here if you celebrate that. It's okay. I hope they can maybe loosen them up a little bit, but that team looks as good as advertised. And I think this is I don't know if we said this explicitly on the preview episode that Stephen Nesbitt and I did. We don't watch the CPBL, like the Chinese Professional Baseball League. Like we don't get to see the players that are pros in Taiwan, like until this event. It's there. It's just on at wild times a day, and it's just not the phase of life that I'm in. Czech players, obviously, we're not seeing any of those guys for the most part. Like they have jobs during the week and play in a weekend league together. Right? So you have these different parts of the world where baseball is growing and very important, and just because we don't see it doesn't mean it's not good. I think that hopefully was made very clear on the preview episode. It's more of a genuine curiosity of like, hey, how much have these things changed? How many guys that they have on some of these teams that can throw 94, 95 now compared to a few years ago? And I think we are seeing that, as you said. We're seeing games that are staying a little closer early, and then eventually, as that depth starts to run dry, the bullpen just isn't quite good enough to keep a more experienced, higher-end lineup at bay. Man, there have been some great stories. I mean, Darrell Hernandez hitting the homer in San Juan, walking off Panama. That was an incredible moment, too. I think that's going to be etched into memories for a long, long time. And Taiwan, like the fans from Taiwan at the Tokyo Dome, audibly, visibly everywhere. Like their 10-inning win over South Korea was one of the more fun wins in pool play. We learned on Monday they needed some help to stay alive and possibly advance. That didn't happen. They're not going to get through. It's going to be Korea getting through, South Korea getting through as the second team in that group. But man, like I was digging through, Baseball Savant actually has a searchable board now for the WBC. So you can just look at stuff. You can look at high velocity pitches. You can look at swings and misses. Like I was just digging around like, okay, like what surprised us so far? And one guy that really jumped out, I did a search for most pitches thrown at 97 plus. Bunch of names you'd expect, like Mason Miller's on there, Victor Vodnik's on there, Daniel Palencia's on there. But then Antoine Kelly was the leader, prospect in the Pirates organization, pitching for the Netherlands. Probably a little underrated, and actually a guy that in our Discord has been getting a lot of shine over the past year. The Frilled Shark has been all over Antoine Kelly for the last year, for anyone that would listen. And there's probably a lot of ways he could be an impact big leaguer. Spent the year kind of split between, I think, high A and double A last year. ERA, like 3.02, tons of Ks, touched 100 in that outing. Did give up a homer to Javier Sanoa, but facing a really strong Venezuela lineup, a team that I predicted to win the entire tournament, kind of held his own, right, in a pretty huge opportunity. So I think it's stories like that. It's like, let me get a look at some of these prospects, some of these non-prospects, some of these guys that haven't been on my radar yet, because it just fills in a lot of gaps, and it's just fun to see them compete on the stage.
Yeah, surprisingly, Kelly's fastball is below average by Stuff Plus with all that velo. But the model says he has a good changeup and a good cutter. So, that's also a bullpen that needs some help on the back end in MLB baseball. So, I enjoy watching these different guys compete. And it's been really fun. It does. Yeah, I want them all in the same time zone at some point. Like the pool play going to all these different places. I know I'm smart enough to figure out time zones, but because they separate out the pool play into all the different countries, like I just feel like I never really know which game is on when. I know there's like boards for this and stuff, but
there's a site called The Athletic. Yeah, right. Good. Yeah, there's Google, which despite its efforts still works well most of the time. As long as you're not using the AI results, it's pretty good.
It's more like prioritizing,
Yeah.
Like, there's just always a game on, so you got to kind of figure out which ones you're going to watch.
Yeah, the ones that have been hitting for me actually have been the games that were being played at the Tokyo Dome, because those are starting, I think it's 9 o'clock my time. Those games have been starting up, so it's in the post-bedtime. Like, I've got 90 minutes to 2.5 hours to myself, depending on how much revenge bedtime procrastination I'm going to do on that night. Shout out to our buddy, Chef Ryan McLaughlin, for that term. That is a real thing, and I experience it pretty much every single day. It's where you're just up for the sake of being up. You're not doing anything particularly productive. You're just taking control of the part of your day because you had no control over the waking hours of the other people in your life. So you're like, these hours are mine. That's when I've been watching those games from that pool, so I've caught a lot of that. Josie Shu was the starter for Taiwan's first pool play game. I thought he looked like he had big league stuff. TPH Noob in our Discord was chiming in that there were teams, I think, in NPB that were interested in him this winter. So I don't know if he'll eventually be on our radar in the States, but clearly a guy that has like high quality stuff, a really good splitter in particular. I thought that looked like he could actually get some high quality bats out if he moved into a situation to have to do that. All that is to say, like, it's a perfect mix of very competitive, very fun at a time when the other baseball spring training games are just not as competitive. They're fun in their own goofy way, but this is on its own level right now. I mean, we had a Logan Allen standoff before the game between Canada and Panama. It's amazing. They had to go to rock, paper, scissors for that.
The two different Logan Allens?
Yeah, the two Logan Allens, who were both born in Florida, different parts of Florida, but are both left-handed.
Oh, my God. That's like the Brady Feigl situation. I have a funny little story. I was at Team USA to talk to Logan Webb and Griffin Jacks, and Griffin Jacks said that, the minute he found out about Team USA, he called his agent and said, I want in. He went to Air Force, and he said the second person he called was Paul Skeens. So there was a lot of like, hey, let's make this a good team. Let's all play. You saw that in Tarek Skubal too. I think he was just really competitive. He was really into the game. He really wanted to win the game. He had left his team with down 1-0, but like had pitched really well. And there was something about that left him hungry, I think. And so, there's a question about, maybe he's going to try and get back in to pitch again. It makes it a little bit tough because this goes right kind of close to opening day, and you have to, the Tigers want him for opening day. So, there's a negotiation going on, and Chandler Rome has a story about it where he was trying to talk to the Tiger officials and Scott Boras about getting back in. They're pretty, everyone's pretty like intense about it and competitive and wants to stay there and wants the USA to win. I'm on the field trying to talk to Logan Webb, and I'm being told, yeah, you'll get him. And that I'm fine. You're fine. You can stay on the field. You can see every other rider leaves the field except for me and Ken. We're both waiting for Logan. Every other media person is gone. It is like 1:02 for a 1:05 start. And he's like, yeah, Logan Webb's coming. Logan Webb's coming. I'm like, what? And I talked to Logan Webb at like 1:04, and then I try to run for the door. There's a door, but there's too many autograph hounds. They've shut the guy's like, I can't open the door. And then I see the color guard walking past me, and I'm like, So I just like turn around and put my hand on my heart, and the national anthem starts. And I'm on the field for the national anthem with Team USA. It's like, oops, I did not mean to be there. I was joking about it with Ken, and Ken said, spring training. Yeah, I guess it was also it was the exhibition against Colorado, so maybe it was a little bit more relaxed. But I've never been stuck on the field for that sort of thing. So that was an experience.
I mean, a pretty cool moment, kind of seems like, even though it happened in panic.
Yeah.
Ken didn't get stuck.
A lot of different things going through your head, right? Like, oh, wow, like Aaron Judge is bigger than everybody else.
Yeah. Ken didn't get stuck in there, did he?
He actually said that he got to interview Logan Webb in the camera well after the game started. So, yeah, he got stuck too. But, Ken's more used to it.
Ken knows all the nooks and crannies of all those places. So, if anything, if he's in a place at a weird time, he probably knows where to go to not be in the weirdest of places, right? Like instinctively, he's just like, oh, okay, this is all here. I'll just tuck into this camera well, and no one will even know I'm down here. Amazing.
Yeah, but it was, you could tell that, when we were actually sitting in the dugout when they started filing in, and like, Alex Bregman sat down next to me. He's like, what up, And I'm like, yeah, this has never happened to me either. I need to get out of here. We were also chopping it up with Ken Griffey Jr., who just is the best storyteller. He's just a funny dude. So he's trying to spread the rumor that Ken's going to retire.
The Griffey's trying to spread that rumor?
Yeah, I don't know why.
That's just kind of funny. I don't really know
just
what the end game is there, but that's all right. Well, hey, if it happens, then we kind of caught it on the show here from
You heard it first.
Eno just being in the right place at the right time. The game Monday night, Paul Skeens will take the ball for Team USA. Manny Barrera takes the ball for Mexico. And it's a really interesting story because Barrera is a 37-year-old journeyman who was added to the roster when Taj Bradley had to drop out. And I think if you said, give me a true baseball journeyman, Barrera is that. 1,800 career innings in professional ball spread out all over the globe. Pitched in Mexico this year, pitched in Taiwan for a little bit this year, made 3 MLB appearances for the Orioles back in 2021. But a 37-year-old that, I mean, could be a phenomenal story if he comes in and just gives Mexico even 2 or 3 good innings against that U.S. lineup.
Jeez, look at all those stops, man. That's
all
amazing.
over. I mean, that like one of the biggest global footprints I've seen for a professional career.
I hope he doesn't have a wife and children. Oh my God, what a life! And none of those places is playing that well, but that's a lifer, man. That is a baseball lifer right there.
Yeah, I mean, all the attention is going to be on Skeens and everything, and I get it. I understand why. I want to watch Skeens pitch too, but the pitcher on the other side, pretty interesting background there as well.
What's the most meaningful game today? It looks like most of them are like Brazil against Great Britain is the first one would be the first one to win a game. They're both winless. I guess it's the biggest one is Cuba against Puerto Rico.
Yeah, that's a huge one. Also think not finishing last in your pool is important because that helps you automatically qualify for the next World Baseball Classic. So even a game between 2 winless teams ends up having high stakes.
Yeah, there's also another level where Olympic qualifying is on the table here, and it is actually pretty difficult to qualify for the Olympics. Andrew Bagley has a story about kind of how messed up those requirements are. So there are a lot of secondary concerns here on the table beyond just advancing to the next pool. It's a pretty interesting story. I'd say check it out.
Yeah, I got the sense that the tournament as it's going to be designed for the Olympics is going to be a lot smaller than we would like it to be. So that's kind of a downer. I think this format seems to be really good that the World Baseball Classic is put together. I realize that playing in the middle of a major league season, if major league players are going to participate, that creates logistics issues that'll be ironed out in the CBA. But I had no idea that there was Olympic qualifying linked into this year's WBC until Bags wrote that story. So be sure to check that out over on The Athletic. Let's get to some spring news and notes. A little bit of overlap as we get started. If you noticed, Jackson Chourio had not played for Team Venezuela yet. It's because he was hit in the hand by a pitch during an exhibition last week. No long-term concern at this time. Could be back in the lineup as soon as Monday. So I guess that's something to keep an eye on if you're watching that one of those nightcaps. That's the Venezuela-Nicaragua matchup at 7 o'clock Eastern tonight. That one might get a little less attention than the U.S. and Mexico, even though it does start an hour earlier, so you could watch it for a while and flip over if that's your viewing.
Yeah, I see that Rafael Devers is scheduled to DH. We were at Scottsdale, and even if you're not a Giants fan, perhaps you could watch your favorite team visit the Giants. I recommend going to Scottsdale. One thing that sets it apart in the Arizona parks is that there are trees on the berm, which is when you're like, it was hot this week in Arizona. When it's like 90 plus and, the sun's beating down, it's pretty awesome to find shade underneath a tree, while you're watching baseball. It's like a whole other experience. It's more like a picnic where there happens to be a baseball game going on. But we had just assumed when we were looking at the lineup that Devers was playing in the WBC, but I'm assuming this is related to his shoulder, his ongoing shoulder issues.
Fortunately, it's not a shoulder that's been slowing him down so far in camp. The Giants shut him down from all baseball activities in late February, but it's a hamstring, so it seems like just some pretty minor tightness that they're trying to monitor on him right now.
Yeah, the other news about Lawrence Butler is mixed. I mean, it's the idea that he's past them, but I didn't realize the extent of his knee issues. He had surgery and he had a PRP injection for tendonitis in the knee. The hope is that he's young enough and he got the surgeries, and that this might actually get him past some of the late season slide he had last year, because these things can affect you. Sometimes you get the surgery, you get better, and you're better off at the plate. So I don't think it's all bad news, but I do wonder, if the over-under on his stolen bases changes at all, and if you think maybe there's a chance that it's only like a 15 or something, or 12. People are normally getting him with the idea that he's going to help their stolen bases.
Yeah, I wonder if the leg's not feeling good or part of why he got caught 7 times last year. He was 22 for 29 as a base stealer last season after going 18 for 18 in 2024 as part of that second half breakout in particular. I guess the simple question I have for you with Butler is, like, are you actually worried about this yet? It's March 9th. I mean, we are 2.5 weeks away from the start of the season. We're kind of hitting that point where I think the 2-week mark is when you want to see guys that have been dealing with these longer term injuries start ramping up, especially on the position player side, because I think as we saw with Devers last year, just as an example of a guy that we thought, oh, he's fine, like he's Devers, like he'll be fine. He had that brutal stretch to start the season because he was still just getting his timing back when the regular season began. So I think it's kind of a situation like that you might be worried about on a shorter term level. And then, of course, longer term, if you're not healthy enough to play in games in March, like how long are you going to be held out? If you do need an IL stint to begin the season, what does that look like? So those things are kind of lingering on the mind for me with Butler. He is slipping a little bit in drafts, so you are getting a slight discount if you're still interested in taking him on. And I think the thing about it too is, like, most likely he's going to feel better post-surgery and with that PRP injection the other knee than he did at the end of last season. So I'm less worried about the stolen bases being there, more worried about the overall recovery getting to where it needs to be for him just to get back out there.
We hear from hitters that it takes about 2.5 weeks to get your timing. We've heard that in the context of, like, how short could spring training be? And, we also know it from rehab stints. If you've been gone a long time, and they're cutting those rehab stints down. I wonder if some of the tools like the Trajects are helping cut that time down, because we're seeing people, it used to be that if you were gone for a month or two, you might be down, in rehab for a week. But I feel like now we're just seeing guys kind of take a few games, prove that they can play back to back, and then they come back up to the major league. So maybe that time frame has changed, over with the help of technology. But I would get a little bit more nervous about, if a player hadn't still played this week, because we are at that 2.5 week point right now. 27th is not that far away.
No, the opener on Wednesday night, 2 weeks from this week in San Francisco. We get the Yankees and Giants getting things started on this 2026 season. Let's call this news or noise. I found a few things that caught my eye, some on the radar gun, some kind of clippings and comments from managers. This is kind of similar to the Butler thing in terms of timing, but it's a different type of problem. If there's a position player that you're targeting, and they have not been named a starter for opening day yet, are you worried about that on March 9th, or is this just the way things work? Because you could throw a few different types of players into this. Like Marcelo Meyer would obviously be in this situation in a job battle, trying to show that he deserves a spot on opening day, that the Red Sox have not confirmed that he's going to be their starting second baseman yet. He's played 4 Grapefruit League games. Like, there's a couple things in play here. Like, one, they have a pretty good sense of what they want to see, and maybe it's actually nothing. Like, maybe all of it on the outside is just to make us think there's more competition than there is. And then alternatively, if there actually is a competition, 4 Grapefruit League games can't possibly be enough for them to make any sort of meaningful decision anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, some of these lineups, I usually think, for the first 3 or 4 innings, it's major leaguers against major leaguers. It's usually pretty good lineups. But if you have a split squad game while the WBC is going on, some of these lineups are pretty iffy. So it is interesting to think about that. Tito Francono about that, and he said if you're making decisions based on spring training stats, you've already lost. So, they're not really trying to look at result stats and figure this out, but they do want to see. I think a lot of times it's defensive fit. It's maybe even some of these sort of makeup and how they carry themselves. Are they carrying themselves like a big leaguer? Are they they're showing no signs of fatigue from being played 3 or 4 days in a row, that sort of stuff. With Marcelo Meyer, he's coming back from wrist surgery, and so this is all supposedly kind of just a slow ramp up that's related to that. That's always been baked into this idea. And the fact that he's gotten into games and he's playing, that's good. I think when I look at that depth chart and I look at the different, possible players, like I know that Romy Gonzalez, can play there, but I think they need to have 2 players there, especially with Caleb Durbin being the main third baseman. I think that they want to have 2 players at second, and that's why Nick Sogard has gotten 29 plate appearances. He's not really done much with them. 2 hits so far, both singles. But on top of that, I just don't think he profiles as a starter, and I think that the Red Sox would not feel that great about going into the regular season with Nick Sogard and Romy as the entire plan at second base. So I still think Marcelo Meyer is going to begin, but I am biased towards this. My plan in AL Labor was to basically take a lot of these guys. I have Cam Smith, Marcelo Meyer, Cole Young, and Parker Meadows on my roster. And, they were all cheaper than they should have been, according to my sheet, but also cheaper than they should have been because of the risk that they don't break camp with their teams. Now, I think Meadows is the center fielder, so that's fine. I think Cam Smith at this point has proven that he's going to take that job. There's not really that much competition in the outfield. I think Cole Young still got it. I wrote that up last week in a playing time battle. I know that Bliss is there, but I don't think he really profiles as a everyday major leaguer. Colt Emerson's not playing at second. Rivas is going to make the team as Cole Young's platoon partner, I think. So I thought there was the other thing I did was I got Brooks Lee, who can play at every position. And my thought was if one of these guys doesn't make it, then I've got some coverage. I can move Brooks Lee into that position and figure something out. So it was a calculated risk, but I am surprised when I look at this page and I see Marcelo Meyer, 12 plate appearances, 4 games. There's so many players who like Vinny Capra has played more than him, twice as much as him. So that does bother me a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, you can be, I think, tricked by some of these situations, though, too. The Arizona one with Jordan Lawler just jumps off the page to me, where the early reports about how he's played in center field are very encouraging. And that goes back to even before spring training games started. Nick Piccolo of the Arizona Republic had a write-up about that. And I think by all accounts, Jordan Lawler is going to be good in center field eventually if he's not good there already. He's getting more reps right now because Alek Thomas is playing with Mexico in the World Baseball Classic. So that could nudge the playing time up even a little further than it would have been if this were a non-WBC year and Thomas was in camp with the Diamondbacks. But then there's also this complicating factor in that situation where Lourdes Gurriel seems to be ahead of schedule in his recovery from a torn ACL. So you have to kind of go through that depth chart and think, okay, what are the different ways the Diamondbacks can actually make things work if all 3 of those guys are around at the same time? And then coming off the ACL in particular, would they want Gurriel to be a DH on a regular basis and say, bump someone else out of the lineup and play Thomas and Lawler in the outfield together and then just carry the job battle over into the regular season? To me, that wouldn't be completely ridiculous. It would basically nudge Pavin Smith into more of a platoon with Carlos Santana at first instead of letting Santana be a regular at first, which, given his age and performance last year, probably makes the most sense. I think that gives the Diamondbacks the best 9 bats for their lineup on any given day.
Yeah, I mean, you don't have to go very far on this team to realize that you're just spring playing time is, by itself not the greatest signal. Ryan Walschmidt had the second most plate appearances on that team. He, carried himself well. He hit, hit a ball 115, but he also hit, 2 balls 111 plus. Like, the average was there, the polish was there. It looked like, I thought he was headed towards actually maybe making this team. I think that it looks more and more also like Corbin Carroll's going to make opening day. And so, maybe they just didn't think that they wanted to keep Waldschmidt, Lawler, and Thomas in that outfield if there was only sort of, part-time playing time for Ryan Waldschmidt, who I guess they still probably love, but they kind of would rather maybe sort through Lawler and Thomas before they call up Waldschmidt. That's sort of the vibe I get, because Waldschmidt got sent out. And, you look at the playing time and say, oh, they really value him and they're really looking at him and maybe making the opening day roster. But some of it is like, well, some guys are away and we just need him to play. And then the other bit of it is we're looking at Ryan Waldschmidt for later on down the line, this season, next season. Like, we're just trying to get a good look at him. And that doesn't mean that he's necessarily going to make the opening day roster. So it is kind of hard to sort through these spring training stats and try to figure out where the signal is.
All right, some news or noise on this one. Kodai Senga averaged 96.7 miles per hour on his four-seamer in his start Saturday against the Cardinals.
I think that's news. It's, you kind of look at that rotation and it could get crowded. You could see if he wasn't pitching well, you could see, I don't know what the answer is, like Penn or, IL or whatever, but you could see all of a sudden maybe he doesn't make that rotation. But the velo alone sort of suggests that he's healthy, and right now he's got above average stuff on 4 pitches, and he's actually showing a really wide arsenal of pitches according to the StatCast. Right now, StatCast has him throwing 7 pitches so far this spring. So I wonder if they kind of pitch labbed him too. Like this is a way different arsenal than I remember, unless they're all being misread. But I'm interested. I want to know more about what's going on with Kodai Senga right now. Will Salmon, come on.
Yeah, we'll get Will Salmon and Tim Britton on there. I'm sure we'll get a good piece from one or both of those guys in the near future. But it's huge for the Mets if they can get Senga to not only stay healthy for most or all of a full season, but also get that four-seamer back up at the higher end of his range. Previously 95.8, 95.7 after averaging 94.7 on that pitch in 2025. So it's even above what we saw in his first 2 seasons with the Mets. Bailey Ober averaged 89.9 on his fastball on Friday night. That comes from our buddy Aaron Gleeman. First inning, 90.4. Second inning, 89.5. Topped out at 91.1. News or noise on Bailey Ober going the other way on the radar gun?
I mean, it's news in that we knew he didn't throw hard, but it was a lot worse last year. And, all of his home run issues and his strikeout rate dropped, and that was from 91.7 to 90.3. So if he drops even further, I'm out. Like I know that it's an intriguing arm with really interesting angles, and he's had some success in the major leagues, but 89 is just, I can't do it. I can't do 89, man.
Even if he's 8 feet tall, it doesn't work for you. He really can't do 89. He just walked away.
Yeah, I can't do 89. No, it's not my bag. And the other thing that's really interesting, according to this, in this battle, is just that Mick Abel is killing it. Like he looks just really, really good this spring. I mean, it's been 10 innings, but it's a 39% strikeout rate against a 0% walk rate. And in terms of what the model sees in Abel, it's just as good, where he's got an amazing sweeper, curve, all just looking really good. The sinker and the four-seam were both above average, and the changeup. The slider's his worst pitch, and he's been locating all 5 of them. So it's a wide mix with, knockout punches and good fastballs. So Mick Abel's a guy who's really been, attracting attention right now. I don't know that it's another thing like Ryan Waldschmidt, where like maybe he just pitches really well and they say, that was great, dude, keep it up. And, we're still going to go north with Ober. So I can't tell you that like he has a spot right now, but he's kind of battling Zebby Matthews, and there aren't full great health issues, in all of this, in this other parts of the rotation. With Joe Ryan had some health issues over himself. So Mick Abel, I think, will get 75 to 100 innings this year at least. And I think they'll be good ones.
I mean, he's doing everything he can in spring games to show that he deserves a spot in that rotation right away. If he does get sent down, he's probably the first guy up and could just stick, depending on the reason for his eventual addition if he doesn't make the rotation outright. Here's one for you. Kyle Harrison, 8 strikeouts in 3 innings against the Mariners on Sunday, 10 swinging strikes, up a little bit on the four-seamer. He was averaging 95.3 on that four-seamer compared to 94.6 a year ago. Are you shifting a bit from your previous lack of enthusiasm with Harrison?
Yeah. Even in my write-up where I was discussing him versus Logan Henderson for the end of the Brewers rotation, which may be figured out by injury. Quinn Priester's battling some sort of wrist issue. If either he or Brandon Woodruff end up on the IL, both Kyle Harrison and Logan Henderson make it. I also think the law of previous usage across baseball suggests that Kyle Harrison and Logan Henderson will both get more than 100 innings this year in the big leagues. But I've long been a guy who has been suspicious of Kyle Harrison because he's got the low slot, high spin efficiency fastball. It is the same kind of package as Andrew Haney and Sean Manaea, and he has had traditionally the same problem those other guys have had, which is he's never really had a great secondary. The problem with being high spin efficiency and low slot is that when you throw a breaking ball, you throw a slurve. And that's exactly what Kyle Harrison throws, and it's exactly what batters expect. They see that arm slot, they see the spin, and they see the slurve, and they expect it. So it's hard to kind of, given that slot, especially if you're not a great pronator, it's hard to differentiate yourself and create a secondary that's great. The fastballs are usually good because the hitters see the low slot and they don't expect it to kind of have life like it does. So the fastball is good. The nice thing is now Kyle Harrison has a kick change, and the kick change is good by the model. Everyone's talking about it. He's had great results. He doesn't command it that well to righties, but every start that he comes out and does this, and he gets better at commanding that changeup, frankly, because he's going to throw more and more of them. And every start that he keeps it up, I get more interested. So I'm back in, baby. Back in on Kyle Harrison.
Back in like you were when you were a prospect, like when he was a prospect. Is that where you're at?
Yeah, kind of. It's been up and down with him, man. He had great AAA stuff plus a long time ago, and then I was like, no, I'm out. Now I'm back in.
I had one of those slow draft moments of very extreme recency bias. I was on the clock in TGFBI overnight, Sunday into Monday, and I adjusted my queue before I went to sleep, and I put Kyle Harrison at the top for the end of round 20, beginning around 21, which is, whatever. Compared to his ADP, I don't know, 100 or 150 picks earlier than he was going over the course of the entire winter. But I think the up arrow was pretty clearly there coming off of the outing on Sunday. I think it's so easy to move from around 30 ADP to like around 20 ADP this time of year. I don't think it's that significant. Like, it's just one of those things, like, get your guys. If you believe in someone, you think they're going to have a job, they're going to exceed expectations, playing the game of chicken, waiting a few rounds, trying to sneak him through isn't going to work. And the chat told me right away, good job, he wasn't coming back to you. So my spidey sense was right in the sense if someone else was ready to take him, we'll see if it's right in the sense that Kyle Harrison's ready to contribute right away in this Brewers rotation. Hunter Barco, I think this is a deep cut, so I'm somewhat favorite of yours, has a new pitch mix. I saw this in a RotoWire update. Kevin Gorman of the Pittsburgh Tribune Review had the full story. New pitches for Hunter Barco. The old pitches really weren't bad from my understanding, but what do you think of Barco with this new mix?
I think I used to kind of put him in a Hurston Waldrop, part of my head where I was like, not great fastballs, but, good splitter. And I thought, I love that park. And so Hunter Barco has been on a lot of my draft and hold teams because I was like, a Pittsburgh Pirate that I think will get 100 innings this year. and I can use 50 of them. That was the idea at first. But a funny thing happened where I was just kind of going through the spring stuff numbers, and I landed on Barco, and I was like, what are all these pitches? Like, I thought that I'd maybe just like hallucinated my idea that he was like a splitter sinker guy from last year. And because right now he has literally used 6 pitches more than 10 pitches each. Which at this point you're like, that's pretty surprising. He's also using the four seam much more than the sinker. So it's like all of it is different. All of it is different. And the model loves all of it. It's pretty crazy. It's a 105 on the sinker, 107 on the four seam, 107 on the slider. That's not his best pitch, but I bet you that's a gyro because he's got a 115 on the sweeper and a 119 on the splitter. So this is all of a sudden like a really good wide mix. Now he's a guy that I think is easily going to surpass Jose Urquidy for the 5th spot. And, if injuries, or his good play kind of combine, he just might be in the rotation all year and give you 150 innings. So, yeah, Hunter Barco's, I just took him in our league, Devil's Rejects. That's a deep, deep league, but I have him in draft and holds, and he's graduating now to 15-team endgame. I mean, that's where I'm interested in him. And it's the arrow is green.
Yeah, he was popping for me in the Tout Wars draft and hold. I got him, I think, after around 30, a week or so ago now, a few days ago. The days are all blurring together, if you can't tell. I mean, it really does. The schedule for the WBC makes those days blur together even more, for what it's worth. But man, it's funny that he was in the same bucket as Waldrop. I don't know why. I find that to be funny. They both pitched at Florida in college, so.
Oh, that's interesting.
Fun fact, right? Yeah.
Yeah, but it's sometimes. I mean, you have to reevaluate your priors often. Like you can't just be like, oh yeah, Gut's better. Wait a second, what are all these other pitches?
So we've been low key asking for updates on Didier Fuentes, I think, for the better part of a month, just to know like proof of health on the shoulder elbow front. 4 Ks and 2 scoreless innings on Saturday through 25 pitches, and this comes at a time where Atlanta also had Joey Wentz carted off the field with an injury this week. He was walking under his own power, I think, after being carted off. So not as bad as the cart initially would have suggested, but another injury to that starting pitcher group. Even if Fuentes is in the next round of cuts, thinking about how aggressively they promoted him last year, you get the sense that with all the injuries they've already amassed, we're going to see some Fuentes in the big leagues in some capacity again in 2026.
Yeah, there's some talk that he's got multiple fastballs. The model only called them four-seamers, but it really liked them. I'm hoping that it still likes them when it's split better into four-seam cutter or four-seam sinker, whatever the 2 fastballs were. But Supplus has always loved Fuentes, and he just rocketed through that minor league that minor league organization last year for the Braves. And I have to think that means something, that they've got their eye on him and that they value him highly. So they're going to need it. I mean, not only maybe not to begin the season, but Joey Wentz is no guarantee to be any good once he's pitching. So if he's not pitching well, they may go just based on, performance. And then there's Grant Holmes' UCL and Reynaldo Lopez's shoulder and just a whole bunch of other things that could go wrong that end up with Fuentes in the big leagues.
Yeah, no, that's a good call.
Oh, but as a spring stuff plus standout, and he won't show on our leaderboard in a second, but I do want to point out that J.R. Ritchie looks amazing in the model right now. So he's a guy that always had a good curve and slider, good curve and cutter in the minor leagues last year. And the curve still rates really highly, but right now in spring, the four-seamer and the sinker are looking good too. So, the sweeper and the cutter aren't actually looking that good in the model, but they're average-ish pitches. He could be a four-seam curve sinker change guy. Not too many guys like that, but he looks like a legit prospect with command of all 5 of his pitches or all 6 of his pitches. So J.R. Ritchie, I think, is ahead of Fuentes, I have to guess.
Yeah, both cruised through multiple minor league stops last year. Fuentes made a brief debut. Richie didn't, but he finished with 59 and two-thirds innings at AAA, 302 ERA, 109 whip, over a strikeout per inning. Had an 11.1% walk rate. Actually had a double-digit walk rate at AA too, so I'm not really sure what changed with Richie as he moved up. Just better competition, I guess. But yeah, he's had a great spring so far. I mean, not hard to see a world where both of those guys are logging innings at some point in that rotation for the Braves. You mentioned having a spring stuff leaderboard for the folks out there. We're looking for surprises. Do we have any pleasant surprises on the current Spring Stuff Plus leaderboard?
We do. Near the top is Richard Fitz with the second best Stuff Plus between Christopher Sanchez and Framber Valdez, so that's pretty surprising. Although I will say that Richard Fitz has had sort of short-term velo bumps and big Stuff Plus bumps in his rearview mirror as well. But it's better to see this than to not see this, and I think this pretty much solidifies him probably as the sixth starter there because he has options, and the Cardinals may want to they've already said that they want to check out Kyle Leahy as a starting pitcher. Kyle Leahy's spring numbers, by the way, are still decent, but I think he looks like a sinker sweeper guy who does have a really hard slider as well. So there is still a chance that Kyle Leahy's dropping too much on people's boards. I don't know why he fell out of favor at some point. I think he just had a bad start in the spring, and then everyone was out. But Kyle Leahy, I think, is ahead of him because they've already said that. And then McGreevy and Palante and May and Liberatore just all seem like locks. So Fitz is interesting, but he's not. I don't think he's going to fight his way onto that rotation on the basis of this alone. The other one is Walbert Urena, who is not somebody that I'd ever heard of before I spotted his name on this list. He is in the Angels organization. Fangraphs said he's 23rd in the org rank and gives him a 40 future value with a 60 fastball. And I think that's what's really showing through on this is that he's got a really, really good sinker. He's got a 68% ground ball rate right now. He's had high ground ball rates in the minors. And I think he might have taken a step forward on this sinker because it's really popping the model. And it's, I know he's not going to be an ace with the strikeout rates that he's had in the minors and stuff, but this is also a team that just needs pitchers. And, with the health injuries risk of Grayson Rodriguez, the collapse risk of Reed Detmers, the injury and collapse risk of Alek Manoah. We just talked about Sam Maldegari being more interesting. Kohanowitz is there. Clausen throws really hard. Maybe Walbert Urena just ends up in the bullpen. But there's opportunity in the bullpen too. So if, I think that's a name to kind of put away for later. And then the last one is Matthew Liberatore, just because we liked him for Lodem reasons.
He's everywhere.
Right. And we liked him for Lodem reasons long enough for him to come around and become non-Lodem.
That's amazing to continue, to do well enough to hang around, to get a chance to then pop in the model later when the models didn't like you before. That's survival.
Yeah, it's just kind of a fun thing. And there's a couple things going on, which is and one of which is just that his velo's up a little bit. But it's not the only explanation. His velo's up like a half tick this spring. But he's tinkering with his pitches. And I think in particular, the biggest thing that's interesting to him is because he has this wide mix, I'm very interested in knowing how he's going to mix his fastballs, really. I mean, this is a guy who throws 6-7 different types of pitches. And he throws them with pretty good command. And, just upping this spring, he's lowered the cutter usage and upped the four seam usage, and lowered the curve and upped the changeup. And he's kind of toying with a new kind of changeup. So just a slight mix change, a little bit of velo, and this is why you have to like guys with big arsenals. There's just always this oh, this could happen. And they also have shown the aptitude to kind of, shape the ball differently. So for them to kind of learn a new pitch, it feels like easier than, I don't know, like it might be easier than a Chase Burns or a Spencer Strider, where they've had so much success on 2 pitches for so long.
Yep, gives you more ways to find something eventually that works. Nice to see Liberatore making more adjustments. I will say I think the Cardinals could use a 6-man rotation, and even if Richard Fitz, who you mentioned before, is on the outside looking in to begin the season, that is a soggy bottom on that depth chart. It should not be hard for him to find an opportunity if he's pitching well at AAA. We need to go on our way out the door. A reminder, you can join our Discord. The link for that is in the show description. Lots of great chatter, especially around the WBC games. Keep tabs on news and notes. Throw some lineup questions in there, draft strategy questions, anything you want. We got a mailbag channel in there as well. We'll probably open up the mailbag again later on this week. So if you got something on your mind, send it in there. We'll be sure to try to get that on the show here in the next few days. That is going to do it for this episode of Rates and Barrels. We're back with you on Tuesday.
Thanks for listening.